Good evening. This is the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting of the School District of Waukesha, scheduled for 5:45 p.m. First order of business is to verify that the meeting has been properly posted.
Yes, the meeting's been properly posted.
Okay, and the second order of business is opportunity for citizens to speak. And I believe we have one person, at least one person who's indicated they want to speak tonight, and we can give them time to get ready. And for the record, we'll need you to state your name and your address.
Hello, my name's Jim Bowman, 1909 Easy Street.
Okay.
That's Easy Street in Pleasant View. Is that an address or what?
Yeah.
Lucky to be a neighbor of Summit View School. My children started at Northview and entered Summit View as a second grader and a first grader on the very first day. And we have loved being 300 paces from the property. But I come to you as the president of Westtown Neighbors Incorporated, a nonprofit neighborhood association that has been involved with a number of events. And 9 years ago, I came to the board. I don't know if any of the members here were board. I remember, I don't know if you remember the last time I spoke with you, but I was concerned about an issue that has gotten neglected, even though we brought it to your attention, and it's gotten worse. So that is flooding. I'm just going to briefly show you a map so I hope some of you will go over there and look at it. But the Summit View property is long and somewhat narrow. And north, the woods, a fence that separates school property from the old subdivision called where Easy Street and all those funny name places. And before this school building, playground, school, amphitheater, woods, I'm just trying to driveway in. Before, everybody over on the street adjacent, on the other side of the boundary fence, had problems with water flowing. This is all high over here. Water flows toward the east. But a great deal of incredible amounts of earth were moved, and what was created was a sensible thing, a swale. A swale is a ditch. And it was planned, and it did function, and does still somewhat function, to carry all the water that flows east toward our houses and our basements, and take it all the way out to the low part at Summit, Summit Avenue. I will tell you that it was really close, whether or not this place was going to be opened on September, whatever it was, in 91 or 92. But they were just doing the grading and seeding, and this swale, and I have it here because it starts out high next to our fence, and it's dug down, and then it goes all the way up the hill to the playground, to the school, to the driveway. And I will tell you, as I told you 9 years ago, that just before the grass that was sown sprouted, we had a big storm, and right about here, an enormous amount of that dirt, which was just plain graded and seeded dirt, it went down into the ditch. It wasn't the end of the world. I was busier about other things. I'm a farm boy. I know about ditches. But right now, after 20-some years of no real attention to this, aside from mowing and mowing and mowing, which means all kinds of green stuff goes down there, that this ditch has filled up to some extent. In other places, I'm encouraging you to, some of you to go over there and walk and look at this ditch. Down here, it is so deep. I could imagine a second grader falling in and drowning when it's full of water, and it can be up to 2.5, 3 feet of water. with no way of crawling out. At any rate, right here, about 9, 10 houses going up to where Francis Street turns east. These have been experienced a great deal of flooding, a great deal of wet basements. And I say it's attributable to the fact that at the point where it most needs attention, it was ignored. 9 years ago, I told you, and I understand that the person who held the position before this gentleman who I just talked to sent some people out and they solved the problem. They took what I had said to them is that you'll know where the problem is because there's a sapling growing right out of the middle of the ditch. Problem solved. No. Symptom solved. So it's worse than it ever is, and I really think that you need to do something before next spring. This last spring had flooded basements. 4 or 5, I haven't talked to everybody here, but 4 or 5 of them were actually water flowed into their basements. The backyards didn't dry out until July. So I had a nice talk with this gentleman. He didn't know about it. I guess his predecessor was, as I recall, really interested in computers and not too much in water flow. So I'm asking you to do something. I'm asking you to do something before the snow flies, asking you to prevent what happened this year, which was a lot of flooded basements. And the people didn't know, you know, and I can't say for sure, but as I said, I'm a farm boy. I know ditching. You gotta ditch the meadow. So I think you have to get a pro out there to go back to the original specifications of how deep and at what angle that swale should be improved to.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments, and thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks.
Can't put it on the agenda for tonight, but maybe some future meeting. Are there any other speakers tonight for the board? Okay, that takes care of our speakers. Now we have committee issues, action items. The first action item today is approval of the monthly vouchers. Any phone calls? Or?
No, I have not received it.
I just want to comment that that did help sending the link through. I was able to look through the vouchers.
Thank you for that suggestion.
So I guess I need a motion for approval of the vouchers if there's no.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. McCaffrey, a second by Ms. Madden. Does this have to be a voice vote, or does this have to be, all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Mr.
Motion
Chairman,
passes 4-0.
Would you note that there's one person absent?
And we'll note that Mr. Como is absent today, with one
The
absent.
vote, right.
4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, with one absent. Thank you, Ms. Madden. Second item is the approval of facility analysis recommendations. Ms. Clifton, Mr. Norder, are you ready to present?
We are,
Okay.
aren't we, Mark?
Yes.
You have a hard copy and an email was mailed to you of the listing of projects that my understanding are still on the table and in the running. So this evening, if we want to go through the list, identify the projects we would like to move forward with, we can keep a running total. And I'm asking for an approval to move forward with whatever projects you see fit with tonight.
Just briefly, a recap from the work session, because I don't believe you were able to make it, Mr. Edlin. One of the issues that came up was we have the, I think it was Mr. McCaffrey brought it up, that some of the projects that we have on here, particularly HVAC, cleaning service, and you know, different things in that area, could quite possibly run over budget. The problem is that you have to be very specific about what you're going to be doing this for, so you can't just put in extra money to come, you know, for if you run over budget. So what we have is a list that's prioritized with, if we run over budget on some of the things above, it'll come from the things down below, is the way it's kind of planned to be. This way, we're specific about what we plan to spend the money on. Therefore, we can't just suddenly add something new. You know, either we spend it on what's here or we don't spend it. So that's why you see the list in front of you. Any additional, Ms. Clifton?
Mr. Norder is also with us this evening. There is one new item on the list, that would be number 14, refurbishing the June air furnaces. And if you have any specific questions on those, you can see that schools affected by that. It would bring them up in efficiency and lengthen their useful life.
Mr. Norder, or Mr. McCaffrey?
What would a June air furnace do? Would that be?
Multi-zone area.
A June air furnace, would you?
I think Steve answered it.
No, it's built into the building. They're not made anymore. They haven't been for a long time, but you can still get parts for them.
June brand name?
It's the brand name. It's a multi-zone air handler.
And we run it off of, what kind of air? are we
Natural
handling?
gas, forced air.
Forced air.
Yeah. They're giant furnaces.
Steve should be using.
Glenn,
We're not running any, air conditioners here.
you are on some.
We are at some.
Yes.
Is your mic on, Pat? We're gonna get a lot of complaints about my meeting.
How big are they?
At-
How big are they? How many BTUs are they?
Oh, good question. I had the information.
Or,
you passed
and
on.
tonnage on the air conditioner would be interesting too.
Pardon?
And tonnage on the air conditioners?
Okay.
What's the BTUs and the tonnage?
I can get that for you. I had it in front of me, but I don't have it in front of me. I apologize for that.
Where are they located in the buildings?
In the
Basements.
mechanical rooms?
They're in the mechanical rooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you say refurbish, Glenn, what are you referring to?
Refurbish would be, cleaning the burners, repacking the
Door gaskets?
insulation, door jams and all that, all them things, just to get them back up. They need new airflow sensor switches. The ones that are on there are outdated, so we're not getting them to run as efficient as we can right now. We'd like to redo all of those on there. Also, out into the fan units of these June air furnaces, we have some issues with some of our shafts and bearings that are old. Like you said, Steve, most of them are 1967 vintage and a little bit older than that or younger than that. There's some squirrel cage fan units that are actually to the point where we need to replace them. One that comes to mind is Butler Middle School. That one's on there. So there's some definite improvements that need to be made to those furnaces.
Okay. It sounds more like maintenance items than real improvements, though. I mean, improvements, I'm thinking we're gonna change the way it works now and make it work differently as an improvement. I know that back in the 1999, 2000, we added a heat recovery system on to them to bring them up to 80% efficient. That was an improvement.
More like this, the wording says to refurbish them. They're old. They need some work to be done on to make them run more efficiently, basically.
I guess the number one thing on the list is maintenance items rather than, it's kind of the same, there's quite a few on the list like that.
Was the staff identified that was not in the Seaman report at all, Glenn?
It was not in their report, no. I asked, Lori had asked me to ask the HVAC guys one more time if there was anything that we could add onto the list, what would it be? And it was just, happened to be that I had just gotten some quotes on doing some of the work from American Foundry. So I went and asked them, and they said, yeah, that really needs to be done along with some of these other things. So I put it on the list quick so we could see if we could wrap it into this.
And Glenn, I mean, we after our F&F meeting, we did bring in a third party to kind of do a quick look around at some of the motors and the drives and things like that?
And we did. Peeper came in to take a look around, just to verify some things for us.
Go ahead.
It's my understanding that they were recommending a frequency drive for these June airs. Why was that?
Who was Steve? Siemens from the get-go?
No,
Or Peeper?
I'm not sure, but I heard that was one of the recommendations,
No, not that I'm aware of.
not for the June air.
Yeah, not for the June air.
Okay. And then I noticed that on the frequency drives, we have soft starts for 30 horsepower and up. And I don't know too many motors in the district that are 30 horsepower and up. I mean, other than the built-up units at North, which they already have frequency drives on them.
After our last discussion, we asked Siemens to go back and verify any of the motors that they thought the soft start or the VFD would be applicable to, and that's what they came back with, so.
Well, I mean, is there anything more specific? I'm a little uncomfortable with Siemens' original proposal where they wanted to slap frequency drives on everything. Because, 10 horse and up, okay, but the only time you need a frequency drive is on a varying load.
Steve,
And-
that number dropped immensely from the first time we met to now of the amount of motors they're actually gonna touch in this upgrade.
Well, I appreciate that, but I just want to match the application to what we really need. Because their original intent was not to do that.
Right,
yeah,
and their
and-
direction was given only do a VFD on a motor that a VFD, it would be applicable to do a VFD on. Only do a soft start on a motor that a soft start would work on. So we've asked them to make sure that the motor's gonna accept what we would like them to do, and that's what they pared it down to.
Yeah, see, I'd have a soft start on everything 10 horsepower and up. I don't know why they went up to 30 horsepower. That's kind of, we don't even, like I said, I don't know of many, if any, 30 horsepower motors in the district.
When we brought in Peeper, and I sat down with them, with Mr. Norder, and their feedback was there wasn't a lot of difference between the cost of a VFD and a soft start. And their other feedback was just because you have motors that may not be ideal for a VFD doesn't mean you have to change out the motors. And his position was that most of the motors wouldn't have to be changed out. You could apply a VFD to them without changing out the motors, quite a few of them. I think that's where he gave us some feedback, that there are some motors that it wouldn't make any sense to also pay for replacing motors and doing the VFD.
Absolutely.
And that was a big help to us when we brought them in. That cut back a lot of the so-called unnecessary expenditures. So,
Well, I guess this kind of, goes to my point. I'm a little concerned because, we paid somebody to come in and tell us what we need, and we're being oversold tremendously. We would have significantly overpaid had we not started making some questions or inquiries on some of this stuff and actually cut it back. So what are we paying for?
well, I think your point's valid, Steve, and I think that's what led us to do more work on it through our facilities and bringing in a third party. And we've seen some results from that, so. But we are watching what we're being recommended very closely. I mean, we are being very careful about that.
But we are paying somebody to tell us this information. It's not like we were given this information for free. And I'm sorry, but, there comes a factor in dealing with somebody in a business relationship where you gotta trust what they're telling you when you're paying for it. Okay, we're looking at the bottom numbers. I'm seeing a payback on our energy savings of 40 years. $200,000 a year, simple payback, energy savings, $8.2 million. 40 years paybacks over the life expectancy of the equipment and the recommendations. Financially, this doesn't make sense.
There are items on that list that aren't intended to be energy savers. They're just something that the district is in the situation where we need to accomplish, efforts that we haven't been able to address otherwise. So you can't just take the bottom line unless we were to remove those things that weren't being presented because they are energy savings items.
Okay, so if we don't do this, if we vote this down, we're not gonna have the money to take care of the stuff we need to do on this list.
We will continue to struggle as we have in the past, but some of the maintenance, deferred maintenance items aren't getting addressed.
Okay.
So back to what was accomplished in the work session, we added, because, you know, even asbestos wasn't covered, and Mr. McCaffrey pointed that out during the work session. Item 12 was added. We did have a bigger number there, which was too big, and we said, look, we'll just take that from another project if it ends up being that extra money. So, you know, the comment made by Mr. McCaffrey is it could be double item number 1, which is number 1 on our list, could be, double in building envelope, air leakage, all those things could be double the cost, and we can't put a contingency in for it. So what we said is, let's create items, cut those items, drop those items off the list if we end up running over on our high priority items. So that doesn't mean everything on this list will end up being done. If we approve it tonight, doesn't mean we have to keep everything on this list. We can take things off. But the idea was to make sure that we had enough funds to cover the higher priority list items, and we'd take from the lower priority list items, which I'm assuming would probably be the last 2 items on the list. Mr. Edlin?
Spreadsheet that we were sent today had another column added to it. I don't know if the toolbar is slid to the right, if it would show that column, but it's not on this piece of paper that we were given tonight, and that was the payback period. How many years payback?
Payback.
Okay, simple payback. Maybe the sheet just wasn't wide enough to print. And I realize that some of the stuff isn't included in that, but when I look at something like 159-year payback, 487-year payback, 237-year payback, we've got so many needs in this district, and, last year, we gave the administration the directive to come up with a way to finance the list that we already had. I didn't ask for this. No, and I'm not sure how in our 1 to 5 year plan for the district on maintenance and how to achieve taking care of that maintenance, this came about, other than it's used to exceed revenue limits. But, like I said before, this is the fifth stab at energy-saving programs in the district, and when I don't see some common sense things like I brought up before, insulating pipes with a payback of 1 to 2 years, I'm not encouraged by the depth or scope or the payback of this particular proposal.
Mr. Norder, the pipe installation issue, I understand is we didn't put that on this because we felt we could do that within our existing resources going
Yeah,
forward?
if we're able to accomplish these projects up here, that would be a project that we could accomplish out of our operating budget.
Why didn't our consultant recommend that?
In the initial rounds, it wasn't evaluated. Given the limited time they had access to our buildings before the turnaround time where we needed the report back, that was one of the items they had not considered. I asked them if they could do a costing to determine what the payback was, and because of the number of buildings we have and the extensive amount of piping we have, it just wasn't feasible for them to go out and do that evaluation. Doesn't mean we can't do it outside of this program, or ask them to come back and do a costing on that particular item, but it just wouldn't be ready in time to make this list.
Okay. Again, the whole idea behind this is to save energy, to get a payback, to save money for the district. And if we hire somebody and pay them to make recommendations and they overlook or don't have time to do this, the things that pay back the quickest, I'm concerned about something that shows up with a 487-year payback. Okay,
The item he's looking
Mr.
at.
Norder, could we look at the 487-year payback
If I
project?
look at if I see it up there, right, it's the boiler plant replacement at both South and West Paul.
Should we
Central.
not do that because it's a 487-year payback?
Well, I gotta tell you what, we have 4 boilers at Waukesha South, and we just took one offline because it's in such bad shape. I had PBS out there to look at it as far as repairing it, and they basically looked at me and said, yeah, we can repair it, but it's almost gonna cost you as much as a new boiler.
Yeah.
So I put it on hold temporarily
Mhm.
to find out where we're going with this project.
those boilers were addressed in the 2000 referendum, and they were supposed to have a major overhaul then. And the company that did the work was told to just patch them, to patch the breaches, weld in new sheet metal, and be done with it. And that was a $25 million maintenance referendum. So here we are again, 15 years later. Now we're going to use this so we don't have to go to referendum. And we're making the same recommendation that we did in 2000. And I don't see this as, truthfully, a energy savings opportunity as much as I do something that should be in our normal everyday budget. Probably has been for a long time.
Yeah, no,
Mr. McCaffrey?
I would agree with you, Steve. I mean, that's not an energy saving. If you look at these chiller condenser unit replacement purpose, doesn't say energy savings. Does it? It says need age of current system. There's no energy saving associated with it.
Right.
The boiler plant improvements, 487, no energy savings included in it. Pneumatic direct control, 237 years payback. There's no energy savings associated with it. So I think that the numbers, the bottom line, the simple payback is off. Those are things that need to be done. They're not necessarily energy savings. Going back to the referendum, I totally understand what you're saying. This stuff wasn't done. Unfortunately, it's our job to fix it now.
Okay.
Is that fair? No, it's not fair. This stuff should have been addressed in the referendum. It wasn't. That leadership is gone, and unfortunately now it falls on us, the people here, to pick up the pieces. So, I mean, I totally understand, and I agree with you, and I was concerned about the same stuff back then, but unfortunately, I still agree with you, but I am not gonna bring it up because it's done. We gotta fix it now, or it's gonna be a problem in the future. But I just want you to know, I do agree with you that was supposed to be taken care of in that referendum. A whole bunch of stuff wasn't taken care of in that referendum.
So.
You know that.
I know that. And so what we're telling our taxpayers tonight is we're going to charge you an additional property tax to do normal everyday maintenance in the district.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell, when I am asked about this, and what I am gonna tell them is, we're going to charge you an extra tax to rectify issues that we had in the past because they need to be rectified. And I was elected to rectify those.
I agree.
Unfortunately, I have to, it's,
But every year, we establish a budget.
Yep.
If we haven't been putting enough money in the budget, that's our problem. That's an operating issue of the district.
yeah.
It's not a taxpayer's problem. The taxpayers, they pay every year to maintain this district. They pay to replace the equipment every year. This is a program that is supposed to be billed on energy savings, and it's not. It's being billed as, we need the money for maintenance because we haven't budgeted enough over the years.
Yeah, and it's a program that was set in place by the state of Wisconsin for us to do this. We're well within the law, you know that.
Well, all I'm saying is it's billed as an energy savings program,
Well, yeah, I
and,
mean,
and we have
would
to
I-
show,
I mean,
we
would
have to
I
have a
bill it as an
performance
energy
contract.
savings program? I might not bill it as an energy savings program.
I'm just
It
saying that
doesn't say
there's,
energy savings.
Probably.
you have to have a
Mr. Edlin-
performance
Mr.
contract
Edlin,
in place.
Have a performance
Mr.
contract.
Mr. Edlin, Mr. Caffey, I'll give one person the floor at a time. Who would like the floor? Mr. Edlin?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, in order to follow this law, you have to have an energy-saving performance contract. And all I'm saying is that bottom number is 40 years to pay for all these things that we need to replace with energy savings. The equipment is going to be worn out, completely gone, a lot of it, by 40 years. So that's a bad law. Whether you like it or not, I can't tell my neighbors, I'm going to charge you extra because we as a district haven't been doing our job.
But what I will tell my neighbors is,
Mr. McCaffrey, you're recognized.
unfortunately, because the job wasn't done correctly in the past, I'm gonna have to fix it. And unfortunately, this is the vehicle I'm gonna have to use to fix it. Because it's the vehicle that I have available to me
Mr. Edlin?
to fix it.
I guess I'm going to agree to just
Yes.
disagree.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, good. Additional comments? Ms. Madden?
Well, some of those payback periods are ridiculous, frankly. How can you figure something is going to take 487 years to pay back? If we have a boiler at South that we had to close down, that school's over 50 years old. Come on, I don't know who didn't fix it, but we've got to do something. So are we going to sit here and argue, well, it should have been done? We better do it now, because now we're responsible. We are the board. We get the money and we get it done, and we get it done properly.
Mr. Edlin?
I agree with you, Ms. Madden. The point is how we're going to pay for it. If this were voted down tonight, would you still want to replace that boiler at South within the budget?
Don't know that we could. We would figure out some other way to do it. Because our budget, I mean, that's a big expense.
Mr. Edlin?
My point is that you don't need the cash in your budget to do these things. You can borrow the money just like you would do under exceeding revenue limits. Either way. With this program, we're going to have to explain to the public why we voted forward a program that we could have borrowed under revenue limits, why we voted in a program that's got a 40-year payback to exceed revenue limits.
I don't think all of it does have a 40-year if you look at it. You have to look at individual items, frankly.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Yeah, I would agree. There's no payback on asbestos abatement.
Right.
You're not gonna get payback. You know that. There's no payback on that. None. The paybacks are put in there, incorrectly, I think, but they're in there, for a specific reason, and that's to abide by the law.
Right, that's described in the statute. Mr. Edlin?
Then I would suggest that we have to take those out because this program requires a payback, a performance contract. And those items that don't have a payback can't be in here.
Payback's 487 years.
Mr. Edlin, just to clarify, the asbestos abatement is kind of a consequence of the other items. So if you're going to touch, if you're going to touch some things, you're going to have to abate the asbestos abatement has to be covered.
When the contractor I work for bids a job, they include those prices. So I don't know if the prices are included in here.
They are not.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know what any of this is, quite frankly. When you say you want to approve $1.022 million for HVAC equipment cleaned and serviced, shouldn't we have an itemized list and the dollar amount attached to it? I mean, there's no checks and balances in the system right now. We're just being asked to approve a large dollar amount without specifications.
Are this Am I recognized?
Mr. McCaffrey?
Thank you. Aren't this, won't we be approving the bids as they come in? These aren't bids. We're just approving
Correct.
a baseline funding of, projects that need to be done, and then we will be approving, is my assumption, we'll be getting bids
Each individual,
from each, and then we'll
contract
be
will be
approving that
given
and
out.
dissecting that further. So we will get a bid from, let's say, J.M. Brennan for cleaning the equipment, and we will scrutinize, I'm assuming we'll be scrutinizing that, correct?
Right,
I mean,
just
expenditure like that's
some,
gonna have to come
some
through.
clarity. Ms. Clifton, could you give us a little bit of the timeline on the process where we're at now?
Certainly. So at this point, the purpose of this evening is to identify projects that you wish to proceed with. The next step after this is to authorize the issuance of debt to pay for said projects, which is the next item on the agenda. That starts the clock for a petition process. So our constituents have the option to ask to petition the debt issuance, and if they so do, then we would require a referendum to go forward to do this borrowing.
But no, I mean, my concern is, and Steve's concern is that he feels that we're writing a blank check. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
And we have not at this point named a performance contractor yet.
No.
So all we are doing at this point is identifying initial projects to focus on that dollar amount so that you have a comfort level of the resolution that you want to issue.
So,
Mr. Edlin?
so if I understand the process correctly, the dollar amount that's on here tonight is what's going to be used to set our dollar amount for our budget?
It sets the threshold for the resolution that we release to the public on the possible intention of issuing debt.
And we wouldn't actually go out to bond the debt until,
Before you do that, you name a performance contractor, and then that just authorizes you to issue debt. There's nothing that says we have to do this immediately in October, do November, December. The whole bidding process takes place on the individual projects.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
So this is really first phase.
okay. And I guess to address Mr. McCaffrey's concern, no, my concern was the individual projects. I see a, I see a number up there,
Right.
but I can't associate that number with anything other than a few words. It's a very
Are you
broad
telling me
statement.
the 16 line items are in enough detail?
Well, number one is $1 million to go through HVAC equipment complete, cleaned and serviced, and we have 25 buildings in the district.
Correct.
So I guess I'd like to see what we're getting for $1 million.
Yeah, my assumption is we'll be seeing that, right?
As a board,
Yes. Right,
if
we'll
you
be
want
seeing
that kind of
exact-
detail,
Yeah,
I'll
we
show
Well,
you.
how do we come up with the numbers? Did we
These are
get bids on
Siemens
this?
estimates, and that's what they provided for us.
Mr. Norder, there's a specific scope within that.
Yeah,
1
and
million.
in that big manual we're given
Yeah,
under
we had
that
big manual.
FIM, it explained and defined that HVAC equipment cleaned and serviced in a better detail. Now, it's not site-specific that we're gonna clean this coil at South High School, but it does tell specifically what that FIM or line item entails. So if you go back to that binder that they gave you and go to that FIM for HVAC equipment cleaned and serviced, it will detail it out a little bit better for us.
So if you remember at the first worksheet, you were given a binder that looks
Mhm.
pretty much like this, though. That's not it, though.
Okay, so it's just a generalized scope of work based on a quick walkthrough of a building. I see this air handler, I want to clean that coil, it's going to cost this much money.
I would say it wasn't a real quick walkthrough. It was probably faster than what we have liked, but they spend some time in each one of our buildings looking into things. So I can attest to that they did that.
Okay,
I mean, they were here
Mr.
for
Norder,
weeks,
just,
so-
just asking a question, I mean, a lot of this relates to the experience at North High School. and what happened at North. Could you go into that a little bit? You went over in the work session.
Yeah, I did. You know, at North High School, after the fire, everything in that building was cleaned, all coils, all VAVs, you name it, it was cleaned from top to bottom, which has resulted in a dramatic difference in airflow in that building, climate comfort. So part of that, like I said, equates out to things not being done to that magnitude in our other buildings. So I saw a direct result of cleaning that equipment, and I think Mr. Etland can say, absolutely. You know, you clean it, it operates much better, and you get better performance.
Mr. Edlin?
I will say that's true. In 1999, the school district of Waukesha commissioned my employer to air balance Waukesha North and correct the indoor air quality issue that had plagued that building, and I spent 3 months air balancing that school. And got it back to the point where there were no longer any complaints about indoor air quality, because I had worked with Siemens to install demand control ventilation and other schemes that were coming about at that time. So I was very intimate with Waukesha North. I know where all the equipment is in that building. I know there's equipment that Bill and Art didn't know was there, that we found. So I guess, you know, if it's gotten that bad over 15 years.
And as I recall, Mr. Norder, we were talking with Pieper about the vintage at West.
When West was built, it was built in a transitional period of what was out there and what was coming. And unfortunately, we got what was out there. So we have some product that wasn't probably the best to put in at that time, what was put in at that time. So we're dealing with that vintage type of scenario now.
And I believe I think the previous F&F meeting or one of the work sessions, you mentioned about the amount of staff time you take trying to solve problems at West.
We have a huge amount of air leaks at that building, and we spend endless hours, day and night, trying to track them down just so we can continue to get things to run properly. So we do spend a lot of labor hours out there.
Which wouldn't show up in a energy savings payback.
No.
It's a manpower issue. Mr. Edlin?
That is correct, and we do have some outdated, very outdated DDC systems, Robert Shaw systems that, as you mentioned, were put in. They're all DOS-based. That Siemens, actually, it's in our budget to replace that stuff. It's been in our budget for a long time. I agree, we do need to upgrade a lot of the controls that are there. We've got equipment there that was put in by a contractor, relations, but equipment that should have never been put in that school to begin with. But there's a lot of equipment, it's a big facility. A DDC system absolutely does save you in manpower and labor and energy.
And just to go over some of the things that were cut out, we cut out all the, this what I so-called safety type stuff, the new entrance at South and things like that. That was all dropped off. The Harvey Phillips
Software.
upgrades, they were all dropped out.
Software, the safety software.
Software. The other thing is that if you look at the flushal meter reengineering, Mr. Edlin, we took and broke that into two components. The reason that was done is because we want to first know what the impact is of these and how reliable they are before we do it district-wide. So we moved, we still kept on the list, but it's at the bottom of the list, with the idea that we want to first do one group, see how it works before we put in another $400,000. Energy savings in terms of the football stadium lighting, there's energy savings, but it's a long payback, like some of the other stuff. We would probably be, hopefully we'll be able to do at least one football stadium if we end up pulling money out of this thing, but we might end up doing none if we end up running over on asbestos abatement and the HVAC program, because we think that's the highest priority on the list. So what we have here is $8.2 million proposed, and we're only authorizing an $8 million referendum. So we're going to have to squeeze the turnip, squeeze it a little bit here. But that's what's on the table, and we can take things off if somebody feels it should be removed. Mr. Edlin?
Mr. Norder, can you explain what item 10 is, pass-through cooling?
Pass-through cooling at Central, South, North, and Horning, our big refrigerator freezer units are cooled with water, which is very,
Water-cooled?
they're water-cooled.
Oh, my gosh.
And then the generator at Summit View is water-cooled. But the water does not run just when the generator runs, it runs continuously. So that's why those items are on there.
Dan Warren would be having a heart attack right now. Hasn't the city approached us about this?
Actually, no.
Why would they?
What the water utility company or utility has offered us is a rebate.
Yeah.
So they're willing to provide funding for us to do some of these energy projects. There's $15,000 built into 2014 for such projects.
Yeah, when I was mentioning before at West some equipment that was improperly placed in that building, the entire administration area had a water-cooled air conditioner. The first month, they blew through their entire budgeted water bill. And then after that, the thing turned into a rock, because when you pass water through these things, all the minerals stay behind in them. So they're constant maintenance.
Okay, any more input on from the administration on this? Any more questions from committee members? I think everybody's position is pretty clear. I really don't have much to add than what's been discussed here, so I'm not going to extend the discussion with additional comments. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the facility analysis recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McCaffrey, a second by Ms. Madden. I assume this will take a roll call vote?
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Edlin?
No.
And Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1. Mr. Como's absent. Okay, moving on to item number 3, which is approval of the resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $8 million and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes thereafter. Ms. Clifton?
So this is the next step in the process. As I mentioned earlier, this resolution, which has been approved by our attorney, wow, you can see, starts the clock for the 30-day petition window. So we would provide notice to our constituents that a resolution is being considered. The dollar amount as listed is $8 million. You certainly have the ability to alter that to a different number if you so wish. And it's in a not to exceed amount. And that would start that window so that if there is interest in, by our constituents in seeking a petition, they have ample time to do so.
Questions, comments? Mr. Edlin?
Just so the general public has knowledge, how many signatures are required on the petition?
25% of the last
Governor's election?
gubernatorial election.
Any other questions? Do I have anybody wanting to amend the amount or make a motion to approve the amount, or?
Initially,
Madden?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out there were debt schedules attached as a sample if you wanted to see. Originally, when we talked about putting information out for a public hearing, we were looking at a $9 million borrowing with the terms of 5 and 10 years. We have added an $8 million with a term of 7 years, so you can see the payments are included.
Ms. Madden?
I would move to approve a resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $8 million and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes therefore.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Lori?
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Edlund?
No.
And Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1. That concludes our action items for tonight. Now we go to our information items, the monthly budget report. Mrs.
Okay.
Sikora?
Thank you. For the month of August, we start out, as we do in a typical school year, the majority of the revenue collected was generated from material fees and athletic participation fees and parking passes. It consisted of 0.84% of our total fiscal year-to-date revenue. And just to sum up the bottom line portion of revenue when compared to last year, in July of 2013, we made a capital lease entry of $2.2 million to reflect the value of the Apple equipment received, and that accounts for the difference from last fiscal year to date. In salaries and benefits, the district has spent 3.88% of the budgeted amount for salaries compared to 3.56% the previous year. In employee benefits, the only real difference in the August month is just a timing difference. August month to date in 2013, the retirement insurance benefits for July and August were booked in August, so that accounts for the difference from August 13 to August 14, month to date. In purchase services, the technology information system expenses in Object 360 included $123,000 for web-based map assessment licenses. And then in our debt retirement, there was no debt retirement in August, and all of the debt retirement consists of the year-to-date is from July. The debt retirement is included in the August, the West High School Apple leases, and the third of the 3 lease payments for the Waukesha 1 first equipment lease, the Cisco networking lease, and the first of 3 payments for Waukesha 1 Wave 3 student devices. In insurance and judgments, it just consisted of our first outlay of liability and property insurance and workman compensation payments. So overall in the general fund, the district has spent $8.1 million, or 5.6% of the budget, as of August 2014, as compared to $9.5 million, or 6.8% expended by the same time last year. And in the special education fund, no revenues yet to report, and year-to-date expenditures are at 1.04% compared to 0.65% last year. So we're just getting started, and it's just moving into our fiscal year. It will be a more active report in the month of September.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sikora. Or is there any comments or questions on the report? I find it interesting that a school district's fiscal year is the same as a church's church year. It starts at the same time. Strange coincidence. Okay. Any additional information to present?
Well, all of our tax levies are collected for the previous year, so that's all wrapped up, and
Okay.
we'll be presenting our audited financial statement in November.
Okay. Okay, next information item is if that completes your report,
Yes.
the next information item is the transportation update.
Yeah, I just want to give you a brief update of where we stand. We are just starting our second year with First Student. As of the start of school year, we have 101 buses on the road. Last year at this time, we had 120. The year preceding that, we had 134. So we are finding with bringing the transportation piece in-house, are having full access to routing, alterations that have been done with some of the grandfathering that are phasing out, and some of the more efficient staffing with buses. We are really reducing those numbers of buses on the road.
And I'll say good riddance to grandfather.
So will I.
You aren't going to find any argument from me.
That supposedly didn't cost us any money, but it was obvious it had to cost us money. Yeah, Any questions for Ms. Clifton on the transportation update? Mr.
I
Edlin?
just wanted to thank Superintendent Gray for working on the issue that we had with local parochial schools. I did get a call from the principal out of the Clear Blue from Trinity, who said that he realized that the district was working on the problem. I think I had mentioned to Superintendent Gray that I brought this up when we were changing our times to start our high schools, because the same routes that are used for our high schools are also used for our parochial schools, and our change in time didn't coincide with their schedule, and they had no desire to change the schedule because they have elementary school children, not high school children. And so I guess the administration's been working to iron that out, and
Yeah, I'm
So
thought it
they-
might have been resolved for the day. I'm
Yep.
not positive, but
yeah,
I'll check
they
with them.
appreciate the effort that we put out to accommodate them. Thank you.
Well, and they, to be honest, they aren't our only school that has a concern with the change in the bell schedules. We have some very tight turnarounds in the morning, and we are struggling through those. I talked with a parochial school this morning, in fact, it's like, we are going to continue to look at those routes as our routes get settled. Right now, we schedule based on eligibility to ride. As we get into it, we're gonna find some of those stops we can take off the schedule because nobody's riding, so we're hoping to tighten those up a little bit and get a quicker turnaround time.
It's just logistics at the beginning of the school year, and I caution them to use patience in there.
Yeah, we may have to shift some routes around, and,
Yeah.
when you take that many buses off line, you can probably guess that something is gonna get missed somewhere, so.
Right, yeah, there were some kids,
Yeah.
I guess, waiting up to an hour after school for the bus.
Yeah, no, that's,
That
yeah,
was-
we don't
yeah.
So we are
Didn't
looking
work
at
out.
those. The other area of concern we have heard is we, at this point, have not been able to accommodate all pay-to-ride requests because our buses are being more utilized, and so
Cool.
we just don't have that many empty slots.
Can we
So
run smaller buses for those pay-to-rides to?
we cannot run the smaller buses, or we risk losing the handicap aid reimbursement that comes from those special ed routes. We heard that
But we could
loud
run
and
one of those as a regular route that, had paid a ride on.
Yeah,
If we had an area that had a few regular riders plus paid a ride, there just wouldn't be any handicap aid for it.
Right.
Actually, it costs us more to run a small bus than a large bus. The per rate charge, it's cheaper to put out a big bus.
Hmm.
So,
Volume.
just the way it goes. But we are looking at all of those things.
Mr. Edlin?
I saw a first student bus at, I believe it was going to Carroll the other day, one of the large ones. Do we have some kind of interaction with Carroll?
No.
Which
Or
building
for-
was it
for
going
student?
to?
I don't know the name of the buildings over there.
Okay,
It was one of the it looked like a brand new, one of the diesel ones, that size. I didn't know
we
for
do a
student.
They
lot with
can
them,
contract
but,
those out, yeah.
Okay,
Because the diesel ones aren't a normal route bus for us. They're really just extracurricular items, so I'm sure they rent them in other ways during the day.
very good, thank you.
Ms. Madden?
If we proceed with our referendum and the next stage and it's approved by the board and goes forward, I would like to make sure that we do a study of our maintenance department, the jobs there, so that we can keep up with this maintenance work that obviously through the years we have not been able to keep up with. In the long run, it's going to save us money. We probably will have to put on more personnel in that particular department, but I think that's something that we definitely should be looking at.
Mr. Gray, in the private sector, you do wage analysis by job type.
yeah.
And with the current situation with Act 10, I think our maintenance, that particular segment of people, we probably should be doing a wage assessment.
We are, Chris Hedstrom is in the process of doing that. She's done quite a bit of it, and we have some meetings coming up to take a look at some of those positions that are either hard to fill in terms of the craftsman maintenance folks, and, we're obviously we'll have to make some adjustments there so we can keep people where they're supposed to be.
Because I think the concern has may be that we may be paying at a very high rate for unskilled labor and not having enough skilled labor.
Right,
you know.
right. But I mean, we have the ability to adjust that now.
Okay, but we haven't.
Well, in prior years, when it was negotiated, if you tried to build up one area, you usually had to cover all the other areas. So if you were trying to increase the salary of a, say, HVAC tech, you also maybe had to increase dramatically the salary of a general cleaner. And now that's changed. We can focus on individual individual different types of disciplines.
So I think, you know, in relation to the first topic, which is on our agenda, was doing these things off our budget instead of raising the levy for. There's, the concern is that when we go to hire a person, are we hiring them at a off-market wage scale for the skill sets that we're hiring them for because of the legacy of our union situation that's keeping us from being able to hire more people in the skilled positions that we need to keep our facilities maintained, so.
Well, we have looked at.
And that's really what Ms. Madden's kind of asking
Yeah.
for. Let's
Yeah.
do a really detailed study on this.
We've looked at city, county, even private sectors in some case, and we will be making some adjustments.
In all job
Going forward.
types, in all job classifications, not just the.
Right.
We want to look at all from the ground up.
Well, right, but I think our biggest need right now is certain areas within the maintenance department. Some of the specialty areas, I think, are the biggest, and then we'll begin to look at all other areas.
Ms. Madden?
When Chris is doing that, is she also looking at the number of employees they have per buildings, et cetera, in other districts?
Yeah, I've
That's
actually worked with Glenn on that particular, looking at, you know, what is the industry standard for square foot per cleaner? And from that, we have added some people out there.
Because I think
So,
that's
yeah.
where we're lacking.
Yeah, we were well behind in that area, although I don't know, Lori, how many people we've added recently, but we did look at that square footage and say, you know, depending on high school, middle school, or elementary, this is kind of the industry standard for.
What about HV and plumbing and,
Well, that is part of just, that other piece where we're looking at, getting in qualified people and looking at what the salaries are so we can attract those people and maintain them.
and what they're expected to do during a day for building wise, et cetera?
Right,
The
yeah,
whole package?
yeah.
Mr. Evan?
I would also recommend that you take a look at management. There's some grumbling going on in the facilities department right now, a lot of morale problems with past issues that have resurfaced again, that we had to create policies for. And, you know, HR, we don't see who gets hired over at the services building. We have no clue. I don't know why we do it that way, but, you know, I'm not sure why they aren't considered personnel that should be reviewed by HR and approved by HR just like everybody else.
It's not required by law, and I think with some of those positions, especially some of the aid positions, there's a lot of movement in and out, and, I mean,
Okay.
you're talking, you know, some pretty cumbersome HR meetings, but,
Okay,
well, I know, you know, we'll be doing a report, Chris will be coming up with something, and I know with the negotiations team, we took a look at some of that information, and we'll be expanding that, and I think it'd be a good idea to share that with the F&F committee and HR committee.
Well, I think Ms. Madden brings up a good point, and has been brought up by other board members, that we need to do a top-to-bottom assessment of what we're paying at each job category. Because if we add in, let's say if we're paying a job category 60,000 where we should be paying 40,000, and we're having to add more people there because we don't have enough people, but we're paying them 50% more, then it puts a crunch on the overall budget and keeps us from being able to hire people in other high-need areas.
Right,
So
right.
I think that's been the concern that has been expressed.
yep.
A year or so,
Yeah.
if I could just add, a year or so ago, we did change that introductory wage for a level 1 custodian, and it was reduced by 25% based on what market determined what it should be. So all entry-level custodial start in at the lower rate now.
Okay. Mr. Edlin?
When you say market, what are you referring to? Comparing to other school districts or the private sector or what?
County typically, similar size entities.
Because it seems like the public sector in that area seems to be paid significantly more than the private sector.
And my understanding when we did the study, it was more typical size entities, not necessarily whether they were public or private. The access to the information that we can get is what we use. You know, private industry isn't required to share their information, but we grab whatever we can find.
I'd probably have to say we are kind of getting it too much into HR.
Okay.
So this probably should be a topic that's covered by the HR committee, which I think there's one or two people that are involved with that committee who could probably ask that
Okay.
to be on the agenda.
Let me rephrase, let me re-steer that conversation then, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, I would just, I would caution the administration that when we're looking at skilled trades positions, you know, again, I don't like to make the comparison of the public sector to the private sector, because as we've seen, we've been paying somebody that pushes a broom nearly the same wages that we paid our skilled workers, our tradespeople. And my concern now is, I think I've shared this with the board, and I've been trying to hammer it home for the last 4.5 years about trying to get young people to go into things like the trades. And I don't know if I've had any impact or not, but there is a significant shortage. And what I'm afraid is now that we may be putting ourselves in a position as a district that we're going to be hiring significantly less than qualified people. These are not residential systems that we're working on. These are very complicated, engineered systems that require a very specific skill set that takes a decade or more to learn. And you're not just going to be able to put an ad out there very easily and find somebody that's going to walk in the door. You're going to get a lot of people applying that are right out of, you know, WCTC or MATC or a residential contractor. No offense, Pat.
Yeah, thanks.
You know what I'm saying. But, you know, we're a district of 25 buildings. We should have had all along a minimum of 3 to 4 HVAC techs to take care of that much territory. We've got issues in that area right now.
HR.
And no, energy savings. Because if you don't maintain the stuff you're putting in, you're throwing away your money.
Any further comments? Well, I guess, does that conclude your report on transportation?
It does.
And I don't see anything else on the agenda.
You have reached the bottom of the agenda and no closed session items.
So with that, we're adjourned.
Nice.